And I'd like to start off with a land acknowledgement. I want to begin by acknowledging that Indigenous peoples are the traditional guardians of this land that we call Canada. And I believe that a land acknowledgement is an important but small step for non-Indigenous folks and their organizations to undertake on the journey to true reconciliation. If you're not sure where to begin or wish to learn more about the land that you are situated on, please visit nativeland.ca. Where I am situated today is known as Waterloo Region in Ontario. Waterloo Region is on the Haldimand Tract, which encompasses 6 miles or 10 kilometers on either side of the Grand River, and it's the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. If you live or work in Waterloo Region, I encourage you to learn about the different organizations supporting Indigenous causes, such as the Land Back Camp and the Healing of the 7 Generations. And I believe Kevin will be posting those links for you to peruse in the chat. So to start off, I'd like to first introduce Jenna from Red Dot Project. Hello there, Jenna. I'll pass over the mic to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome. I'm so happy to have you all here. And happy back to school season. First of all, can we hear me okay? Okay, awesome. So my name is Jenna Gall. I volunteer with Red Dot Project, an amazing menstrual equity organization. And we're so happy to partner with Days for Girls Canada and Changing the Flow on an amazing series of menstrual equity events. In honor of back to school season, we'll be hosting Menstrual Ed 101, which is a 3-period series focused on educating and empowering students to become active in the menstrual equity movement in their schools and in their communities at large. Today's event, Period 1, will focus on the policies and politics surrounding menstrual equity and period poverty in schools. Tonight's event will feature a pre-recorded conversation with Marit Stiles, education critic and MPP for the Toronto riding of Davenport, and Keyna Sarkar, a wonderful young menstrual equity advocate and activist who's done some amazing work in her community. Following this conversation, we will be showing a video created by Monica Bradford-Leah and Lauren Welchner, the founders of the award-winning theater company Spency Day. Love this series of videos, especially the one that we're going to be showing tonight. And we'll conclude with a message from Parliamentary Secretary Keyna Sarkar, who is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Women, Gender Equality and Youth. Before we get into the meat of our event, we will be viewing a short film created by Bodyform UK entitled Blood Normal, Fear Going to School Less, which will highlight the experiences of young menstruators face stigma relating to their periods in schools, as well as gaps in education, especially for young boys and non-menstruators. I kindly ask that you all be cognizant of the gendered language that's used in the video. We at Share the Platform typically use the terms menstruator and non-menstruator and recognize that not all people who menstruate are women and not all women menstruate. So bearing that in mind, let's get into the video.
What is a period?
I don't think I've ever really met many boys who have understood it.
It's just like when there's this thing like sheds and it comes out.
If it's your first time, then it's like a nightmare.
Sometimes I cry for the reason, I don't know what it is, but I just cry.
The old egg, if it hasn't
Been fertilised.
yeah, and then it like goes.
Some kids my age don't know what it is.
Do you think you can control it when you wee?
You've got 2 different holes down there.
Oh my god, he just knows everything, doesn't he?
How often does a period happen?
I'm not sure, I don't know.
It just comes like once every month, doesn't it?
How much fluid do you think girls lose each period?
Well, it feels like that much.
Yeah.
It's not just like, like a waterfall, is it?
Wait, tell me when to stop then.
I don't know if it'll be more though.
Yeah,
Final,
so
final.
3 cups.
That one, yeah.
What happens if you do a handstand during your period? Like, is it just like...
Wouldn't that look like shoot up like a volcano or something?
Mainly you feel really awkward. Just a bit uncomfortable and not really want to talk about it because then they just end up laughing about it.
Boys don't know as well as girls, so I think they just make a bit of a joke out of it.
So I probably have been teased once or twice just by boys in passing. If you're grumpy or anything, they say, it's that time of the month.
I've seen people be teased and it just made her feel like really, really terrible for like the rest of the day, for the rest of the week.
You feel very alone.
You don't talk about your period, and it's like with your friends.
My friendship group, we call it Patricia. So it's like a little name, so no one really knows what we're talking about. It's kind of obvious.
I feel like I've done something wrong to them to like make them not feel comfortable.
$1,000?
1,000, 2,000, 50,000.
You never know if someone's like they're fine with you joking like outside, but you never know like what's happening like on the inside.
Making a joke is just a way for us to get, a little bit more comfortable in the situation.
They've sort of been conditioned to think like that, and that I think shows a gap in the education system as well.
Where would someone go at school to get a product?
Ask the teacher for one.
I didn't know you could get them at school.
You can get condoms for free, so why can't you get pads for free?
Period pads.
This is a pad, I'm pretty sure it's like a big one.
What is this?
Is that sticky stuff? Ugh, sticky.
My friends are all going through it at the same time, so I just get the information from them, so they all talk about it, and I just kind of learn about it too.
School don't choose to focus on it too much.
They didn't explain what we'd be going through and how to handle it. They were just like, this is how you put on a pad.
School, they don't really do much.
They tell you about how periods happen, but they don't tell you how you can help. They do the science of it.
The girls got to talk, but we haven't been told anything.
Yeah.
That's the same in my school.
We always like split the boys and girls up, which is really annoying because
That's what makes it
know about it.
like awkward.
I don't think anyone should be embarrassed about talking at boys nor girls.
Would you be comfortable talking about periods in front of girls?
Yeah, I think it's more about how it's necessary than being comfortable with it.
When we teach girls about periods, boys should be involved.
We should be equally as aware. Then they'd know what a girl has to go through.
I wouldn't feel so awkward talking to them about it if I needed help.
I'd like them to know a lot more.
Guys should be able to understand what's happening without making a joke.
Everyone should learn about it. It's just like learning maths.
It was a wonderful video. I hope that you all enjoyed it. And if you wanted to watch it again, the link is shared in the chat. I think that education is such an interesting solution to, well, it's part of the problem and it can be part of the solution, which is why we're here with this series of period education. So without further ado, I will now introduce our first activity for today. We'll be hearing from Keyna and Marit. Keyna Sarkar is the founder and executive director of the Red Movement, which is a youth-led nonprofit focused on advancing sustainable menstrual equity, which is a long-term solution to period poverty. This is a three-pronged approach based on reusable period products involving advocacy, education, and service while working to destigmatize periods. She has been the driving force for the provision of free menstrual products in public washrooms in Brampton, Mississauga, region of York, and more. Currently, the Red Movement is looking for passionate change makers to start and lead chapters in their high schools, cities, or universities. So if you're interested, please contact the Red Movement. A link will be provided in the chat. Marit Stiles is the MPP for Davenport and Education critic in the Ontario legislature. A passionate advocate for public education, Marit is committed to ensuring local schools have the resources they need to foster strong communities and help students succeed. In early 2019, Marit introduced a motion calling on the provincial government to make menstrual products available free in school washrooms. So let's hear it from Keyna and Marit.
Last year, something very, very exciting happened. The Ontario government announced the provision of free menstrual products in high school in partnership with Shoppers Drug Mart. When I heard, I was over the moon. I was like, oh my God, this is finally happening. Because I know it was a joint effort of so many individuals across the province, menstruators and non-menstruators alike. It was wonderful to watch, and it was amazing and validating, I'd even say, to hear that the Ontario government had finally done this. But then months passed on and I didn't see products coming to my school. I asked other students, other people that I work with, they didn't see products coming to their school. For the record, I'm from Peel, and I questioned what was happening. I did go to some counselors, people at the office, and asked them about this, and they said, oh, we can't do anything about it. So I was like, okay, you know what, maybe I'll give it a bit of time, give them the benefit of doubt. Comes February 2022 this year, and there's still nothing to be seen. I actually go and ask them, and they said, we have some products available, but you have to come to the office to get them. And I'm like, A, you did not tell anybody about this, and B, that kind of defeats the purpose of actually providing free menstrual products. So that is the perspective students have on this. What are your thoughts on this initiative? Are you able to provide updates on where it's at right now?
Well, it is, I mean, like you said, it was great when they announced this because we've been fighting for it. And I would say, like, I had brought forward a bill and I think a motion on this. We had been working for it at the legislature, but really it was students that had come to me and said, like, we are tired of patching together solutions. We've gotten really good at it, but we really think this should be a right to be able to have products freely available in all washrooms in schools. And so when I first met with the then new Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, in 2019, I guess it was, he asked me specifically about, things that I had in mind that we could move on. And I said, well, here's an easy one. And he seemed to take some interest. So I was really pleased to see that he moved that forward. There aren't many things that we can agree on these days. So I was really happy about that. But there are some shortcomings to it for sure, which I've raised with him as well and raised in the legislature. I mean, first of all, it's a pilot. We need this to be permanent and publicly funded, fully publicly funded. We also need to make sure that and I think what's happened and where things have gone a bit sideways is that they've downloaded a lot of the responsibility onto boards. And boards are dealing with a lot already. Now, it's not to make excuses for them, but I think that what they're looking for is clear direction and a little bit more support to get this moving. So I think that, without some kind of, and also frankly, like without the government saying, this is required, you must do this, clear direction, you're not going to see it happen as quickly as it needs to. It should be there. It should have been there for years now. And I know that, COVID happened and that was complicated some things. But, at this point, there's been a few, time enough to get this moving. And I think the other piece of it that, speaks to your own initiatives and the work you do in the Red Movement is sustainability products, which I think, again, the products that we're talking about are very limited. It wasn't even really clear whether it was going to be anything more than pads, and pads, you have to have choice for people, certainly, as well. So it's disappointing to hear that they're not being available in the schools that you were checking in on. I've heard it from other parts of the province too. And yeah, and I think it, speaks to, like, the government has to step up and provide clearer direction, but also, the funds and the support to make sure it happens.
Sounds amazing. Yeah, I completely agree with a lot of what you said there. One thing that really stood out to me though was that you mentioned that a lot of the responsibilities, as you said, was downloaded to the boards individually. Why do you think that the boards are in need of such explicit directions to actually implement such a project? Why do you think they don't have the ability to do it themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And I think probably some boards are doing a better job of it than others, clearly. But, it really does, like a lot of these things depend on people in a school board who are going to actually champion these issues and follow through and make sure that it's happening in each individual school. The fact that they've said that, you have to go to the office, that's actually not at all the intention of the original directive. This is supposed to be provided in washrooms. That's the whole point. So if their message isn't getting down to those people, then clearly something isn't working here. Part of it is that boards are there's always going to be a million priorities. And this one isn't going to be given priority unless the supports exist. So the province needs to make it, frankly, as easy as possible. Accept that our principals and office administrators and custodians and teachers and everybody are very, very busy people, and give them as much support as possible to ensure that those products are freely available, that they don't run out, and they're in every single washroom, and that's where they're supposed to be. And I think, there was some talk as well about, providing dispensers and things like this, because there's some, worry that suddenly they're all these supplies are going to go missing. Well, my response on that is, well, if it goes missing, it's because somebody needs it. So
exactly,
it's not really like there's like some black market in menstrual supplies, at least not that I'm aware of, although they are expensive. So, certainly people, students, if they need them, they're going to access them, and we need to keep the supply steady and diverse and available.
Absolutely. No, I heard the same thing. They said if we keep them out in the washroom, they're just going to go missing overnight. I'm like, that is maybe exactly why you should put them out. They need them. There's somebody out there just free menstruating. They need the products. That should not be a cause for concern. But thank you so much for understanding and advocating for us. I'm sure that we'll see some more advancements and actual results, tangible results in the near future. My next question kind of segues very similarly. In a memorandum from Nancy Naylor, Deputy Minister, dated October 8, 2021, implementation of this project was encouraged to incorporate student voice. However, most students have no clue where to find products or whom to speak to regarding this project either. Like I've mentioned, I myself tried a bit of work there. I tried speaking to student trustees. I emailed them 3 times before I could get a response, and I had to email 2 individuals, and only one of them came back with a response that was literally just 1 sentence long to my 3 emails, and they literally just said that it is already implemented, and then period, and nothing else. No, contact my office if you have further questions. No, go to your principal or VP to talk to more about. Nothing like that. It was just, this is it, moving on. That kind of doesn't make us feel very listened to, like our voices matter, even though we're the ones that are being directly impacted by this. I think it's very important that students are actually taken seriously. Most of us are very young, of course. We're in high school, but most of the times we don't get taken seriously because we're just too young. And it just kind of makes us feel very invalidated. And I don't think it does well for people's self-esteem. So my question to you is, how will you hold the government accountable for following through with their intent to enhance student access to menstrual products and actually involve students in this process?
It's a good point. I mean, I think that really when you make good policy, you really have to be very clear about what expectations are, and there has to be follow through and monitoring of what happens with it, right? So that's what's missing in this, I think. And so a good example of that is, as you said, the directive that there should be student voice. Well, what does that look like? It probably is student council in a school connecting with, identifying people to have a sit down with, the principal or the custodian or whoever is going to make sure that those products get into those washrooms, and have a conversation about what works for student population. And one of the problems there is going to be, is your student council, do they have people on there who are actually like interested and engaged in this issue? So, it really has to be, very clear. Here's the expectation that they will sit down with the student council, that the student council will identify people who, are interested in this issue or impacted by this issue, let's just say, right? And it has to be very clear that way. And I think the fact that it isn't shows again that the government isn't really serious about making this work. Because it's one thing to release a policy like they announced, and make a big flashy announcement about it and sound very progressive and forward thinking, but it's another thing to actually, actually ensure and that this is followed through and that it works and that it's effective. And sometimes I think my more, on some of the worst days, I wonder whether government does this kind of thing intentionally. So it doesn't work, right? So they can say, well, we tried, but it didn't work. So we'll move on now. And so I think that they have to be very clear about that. And I agree with you that like student trustees, and in fact, there are student trustees who have pushed on their boards. Before the provincial government ever came in, there were student trustees who moved motions and passed motions and school boards to have menstrual supplies in schools. So, there's definitely an interest out there among so many youth and also among a lot of student trustees. But again, unless the government puts in place like clear requirements, this is what it looks like. This is what why student voice matters and why you need to talk to students about how this should be best delivered. You're going to have problems. Because the other part of this is, one of the big, as you know all too well, one of the big barriers to just getting menstrual supplies out there at all is stigma, is the lack of openness and conversation that's happening, and lack of education. This is a big concern. And so I would also argue that putting the supplies in school is only part of the solution. It has to be accompanied by real conversation, by a change to our education system and the way that we talk about periods and menstruation and what makes a normal period and such. And I think to the point the work that you do, that also involves like alternatives and sustainability, right? Which is another conversation that we should be having at the same time. So, what I can do and what I'll continue to do is to raise these issues in the legislature and to raise them when I do have the rare phone call with the Minister of Education. And I will definitely follow up with him following this conversation. And I want to say to, folks that are maybe watching this here today too, that, definitely talk to your local politicians, provincial members of provincial parliament like myself, whether they're in government or in opposition, have a responsibility to you, not just at 18 when you can vote, but all the time. And so it's my responsibility when somebody raises issues like this with me to bring those concerns forward. So if you're not seeing these changes in your school, certainly raise it with your principal, raise it with your your trustee, let alone your student trustee. And then, don't hesitate to go to your provincial representative. It's very, first of all, politicians like me love to talk to students. Usually they should. And you could ask them, I would like you to write a letter to the Minister of Education outlining our concerns. And that's at the very least that a member of provincial parliament can do. So I'll definitely be raising this. And I think it is, again, like in terms of policy and how we develop this stuff, it's really important that we are very clear about as well follow through. So the government should be following up to make sure these things are happening and that student voice is being included in the conversation.
Absolutely. And I think I can speak for all students, or at least all menstruators, when I say that it's very nice to have somebody who's actually doing their work and holding the government accountable for their actions. So thank you for that. You did mention that education on periods is very, very important. I'm going to be transparent. I did not do any schooling before grade 9 in Canada. So I am not sure how menstrual education is over here, but purely based on the conversations I've had with my peers, not only from within Ontario, but across Canada, now that I am in British Columbia and have exposure to more people, is that there hasn't been enough talk. Many have told me that their teachers just kind of skimmed over it because they were kind of embarrassed to talk about it. Others said that they completely didn't talk about it because they did one class for it, and that's the day they weren't there. Others said that they did have the menstrual education in their sex ed class, but then it was so brief and the teachers weren't willing to answer questions. Granted, this was maybe 5 years ago, but I think this is still a sentiment felt by a lot of students in the school system. What do you have to say to this?
Yeah, I think it's actually very spotty, to say the least, the quality of the education people get. I mean, I think you can talk to, you may find that if you just talk to young people out there, they'll tell you, well, I actually had my teacher was great, gave us a really good talk, was really open, encouraged everybody, even people who were maybe non-menstruators, to have a conversation and to feel like this is a normal part of life and speak openly about it, and always did so. And then you'll get a whole bunch of other people who will say the same story, tell the same story you did, which is my teacher kind of, didn't really deal with it very well. They were embarrassed. And that's the same with a lot of health and physical education and a lot of conversations we have about our bodies. And this is why it's so important that we have a strong curriculum, that it's very clear for educators what the expectations are about how they teach these topics. But it's also really important to give them support. And I think that a lot of the educators I've spoken to don't feel supported in providing like really good information and how to have these conversations and how to weave it in from a very early age through the curriculum. It takes experts. There are people out there who really understand this stuff and know how to teach it in a really great way. And I wanted to bring to your attention, there is a work happening in BC actually right now in one of the boards based on a program that took place in New Zealand, where they did a lot of work on changing up how they talk about menstruation, and particularly like what is a normal period. And that work, they're pilot testing it in some boards in BC, which I think is really exciting. So they have like experts in this working in those boards to try and teach this in a different way. And I think that's very exciting. And I've been advocating that we do that in Ontario, well, all over the place, right? But I don't think we should have to just rely. You shouldn't. It's just like anything. Like I don't want to only get taught math because a teacher I have happens to like math, right? I expect my kids to learn a certain level of math, right? And it's the same thing with this. This is so important. And I would love to get to a place, and I love the work that Kevin and everybody have been doing to have that conversation, to make it part of more of the kind of discourse, the health discourse out there. I will say one thing, and that is that I really am also feel very strongly about this conversation about what is a normal period, because there are 1 in 10 at least menstruators, people who menstruate, have endometriosis. And endometriosis, and I won't get into it all now, I'll ask anybody watching to look it up. If you have periods that are painful, that's not normal. Right? A little bit of cramping is maybe normal, but if you're having really painful periods that, you feel like you can't go to school, or you can't concentrate, or you're having to skip activities, that's not normal. And there's things that can be done to address that. And the earlier we can actually get people understanding that, the more chance that we have of helping people who do have endometriosis or other conditions that might be causing that, to get them the treatment they need. Right now, a lot of people wait 20 years before they're 20 years before they're ever diagnosed. And that's just absolutely outrageous. So again, like the more we can do to help people understand what's normal, the better.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought up endometriosis, because we do quite a bit of educational workshops too, especially people who are struggling. So essentially youth in need or youth at risk, women and people in shelters, refugees, Indigenous people who are in need of support. And so we do a bit of educating ourselves, and we often come across the fact that people don't know about the period-related health issues. People don't know what PCOS or PCOD is, what endometriosis is. And there's just that whole education gap. And we are an organization that tries to educate people. So what we have done is we've tried to approach school boards and ask them that, hey, can we do workshops to teach the menstruators and non-menstruators in your schools about periods? Guess what their answer was? No. Their reasoning was ridiculous, in my opinion. They said that, well, at that point, I was just 18. They said that I was too young to be doing this and that they wouldn't trust their 16-year-old in the hands of an 18-year-old. And that was just a complete shock. I was literally shell-shocked. How am I supposed to possibly respond to that sort of small-minded person, narrow-minded person?
It's so important, right? Because that kind of
It is.
peer-to-peer conversation too would be like really valuable, actually.
Exactly.
So valuable. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people would feel much more comfortable to talk about periods if they see somebody closer to their own age who's had more experiences in this day and age navigating their periods. So yeah, that's just a little tidbit that I wanted to share with you. But you were absolutely right. There are so many educators who are genuinely, truly passionate about this work. While I've had a bunch of negative experiences with people in the school board, I've also had a ton of positive ones. Teachers that have been so beautifully supportive of our work. They've literally gone out of their way to donate. They've gone out of the way to collect resources for us to use. It's beautiful to see the support. And I'm just really keen on seeing how it grows in the future. If you could leave us off with tips on how young people like me can get more involved in policy making, it would be amazing.
Well, I mean, I think the first thing I really highly recommend is meeting your local elected officials. And if you're interested in like healthcare, education, these things, really the provincial representatives have a lot of impact in those areas. So I would suggest that for sure. Reach out in hearing from people, and particularly from young people, about what you're interested in, what your passions are, and particularly to hear what issues matter to you. Because you know what, for politicians, you're also future voters.
Mm-hmm.
So it is important, and so they should listen to you. But I would say that I would never assume that you aren't your experience and your knowledge isn't valid. It is very valid. It's very important to the work that we do and the decisions that are made every day. And so I would, highly encourage you to always reach out that way. The other thing is to get involved with organizations that are doing good work, like Changing the Flow, like Red Movement. There's so many good organizations that are doing important work that feeds into policy and how it's developed in the province and nationally and locally, right? And so I think that's really useful. And the other thing I would say is, when there are elections happening, like here in Ontario right now and in other parts of the country, there's local elections happening. And I would really suggest, when people knock on your door, ask them about talk to them about the issues that matter to you. Ask them the questions that are on your mind. It's really important, and it impacts a lot the direction that people will take in the policy that they make going forward. And then finally, I would say, look out for those opportunities where your local elected officials have set up things like youth councils, because that's becoming something quite popular to do. And I would say sometimes I wonder whether they're actually, really listening, but I think that they should be, and they can be really important. And I know that in my NDP caucus here at Queen's Park, some of my colleagues from all across this province have brought forward legislation that was developed with their youth councils and actually became bills and became laws. So that's pretty exciting. And I think that, again, we're all interested in that. A lot of us are interested in that kind of thing because we know that it's connecting to young people on the issues that really they prioritize that matter to them. And it's, at the end of the day, like I feel like a lot of young people feel like they aren't listened to, whether it's not in their school or in their community, that their priorities aren't really, the issues they care about are not prioritized. So I would just say again, like, get involved. Make sure you take a moment to share your perspective. When somebody comes to the door, knocking on your door to ask for your parents' vote, even if you're not able to vote yet, make sure you get in front of that door and ask them some questions about what matters to you.
Absolutely. I hope that all our amazing listeners were able to take some actionable tips out of this long list that Marit has blessed us with. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much Changing the Flow and Kevin for organizing this beautiful interview and this beautiful event, 3-day event. And I really hope that you were able to attend all of them, if not at least one. And we hope that you've enjoyed this as much as we have, not to speak for Marit, but I truly enjoyed this and I've taken a lot from this conversation. So thank you all for your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Keyna. Thank you so much, Marit. Both of you were absolutely fantastic. We really, really appreciate you coming to share with us today. And folks, please take some time to learn more about Keyna's work with the Red Movement on social media at the Red MVMNT. And you can also follow all of Marit's advocacy work, specifically around menstrual equity and endometriosis, and much more at her website, MaritStilesMPP.ca. We are coming up with some fantastic content in just a moment, but first, please take a moment to register for period 2 of our 3-period series, Menstrual Ed 101. Period 2 is Student Perspectives. It is October 17th from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern. You can register for free at the link on the screen. We will put it in the chat, and of course, follow us on social media for reminders. The Red Dot Project, Days for Girls Canada, and Changing the Flow. And now get ready for something completely different.
Hello, everybody! Good to see ya. Good evening. Hello, and welcome to Blood Bucket, the game where we answer questions about our periods super fast. This game is all about talking about our experiences and owning our bodies super fast. We have 45 seconds to get through the whole cycle of questions. So let's get going. Where were you when you got your first period? Just at home. How many pairs of stained underwear do you have? Most of them. Which one doesn't? Have you ever missed school or work because of your period? Oh, for sure. Do you get acne on your period? I used to, but I don't anymore. Light, medium, or heavy flow? Like medium. Have you ever worn white on your period? Yeah, I wore it on stage with you. What food do you crave on your period? Like red meat and tomatoes and chocolate. How many days is your average period? It's like 5.5. What is one thing you do to help with cramps? Advil. How old were you when you first got your period? 12. When is the last time you leaked? A while ago. I wear a Diva Cup and underwear. What pandemonium? Play the game. Just play the game with your families and talk about your vaginas, okay? God damn it! Just play the blood bucket game. Hi!
Thank you so much, everyone, for sticking around to this point. I hope you've enjoyed our event thus far. You can actually now play the Blood Bucket game on Instagram. Monica and Lauren of Spicy Day have created this really, really cool game. So you can post on your story, share with your friends. We encourage you to tag at spicy_day on Instagram when you make these posts. It's a really great way of opening up conversations, breaking down stigma, and creating openness with people surrounding menstruation. So I highly encourage you all to do that. I've also played the game Filter, and it's super fun. And now we're going to move on to from the wonderful PS Odds.
Thanks, Jenna. I'll introduce Jenna Suds before allowing her to speak. Jenna Suds is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Women, Gender Equality and Youth, as well as the Member of Parliament for Canada Carleton in the House of Commons of Canada. So without further ado, let's hear from Jenna.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that kind introduction and for welcoming me here tonight. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'd first like to acknowledge that I am speaking to you from the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin peoples, whom I thank for sharing their land with us here today. So again, my thanks for the kind invitation. It really is the highlight of my day when I get to join conversations like this with individuals and organizations that share a passion for this important work. I'm really grateful for the advocacy work that I know so many of you all are doing and your continued commitment to advancing gender equality. Your organizations have been instrumental in raising public awareness of the challenges facing just over 1 million in menstruating Canadians that are living under the poverty line, who struggle to pay for the menstrual products that they need each and every month. Thanks in good part for your efforts. We're now making some very meaningful progress in addressing period poverty. We all know that no one should have to worry about accessing menstrual products. Surveys, of course, have found that 1 in 5 people who menstruate in Canada find it difficult to pay for the products that they need. And research has underlined that marginalized populations in particular are at the greatest risk for period poverty. These challenges are particularly acute among youth, single mothers, or people who are experiencing homelessness. Something as natural as a period should not be a financial burden, nor should it prevent anyone from attending school, going to work, or fully participating in their community. Menstrual products are certainly not a luxury, and they are essential to our health and our well-being. Talking about menstruation is also not something to shy away from, as we all know, everyone that's here tonight. The more we talk about it, especially with non-menstruators, the more that we can reduce stigma. So we know the most recent Plan International Canada survey showed us that 41% of girls aged 13 to 17 have experienced being made fun of for having a period or experiencing PMS in some form, have been insulted. This reality cannot be tolerated. We need to break down barriers to accessing menstrual supplies, to challenging unwanted stigma and shame, and improve supports to both the individual and institutional levels for everyone who menstruates. Thankfully, we have started to make some headway in addressing this issue here in Canada, again, in large part to the amazing work that many of you I know are doing. Our government is distributing funds to increase access to menstrual products for First Nations and Inuit students across the country. All students in First Nations operated schools on reserve and in federal schools either already have or will soon have access to free menstrual products. And recently, Budget 2022 committed $25 million over the next 2 years to establish a national pilot project for a menstrual equity fund to make menstrual products available to Canadians in need. So myself, working along with the Women and Gender Equality Canada team, is currently working with our federal partners, the provinces and the territories, community organizations, and experts across the country to help develop this national pilot program, which really has two components. So the first component being to ensure access to menstrual products for those most in need throughout Canada. And the second aspect is education on menstruation. And I think education is equally as important as supplying products to those who need them. Stigma around menstruation persists, and I believe that education is a tool to help achieve menstrual equity. So earlier this summer, throughout the summer, I've met with many, many stakeholders that are helping, including some of you, that are helping to inform the design of the Menstrual Equity Fund. We've spoke about period poverty, the demand for products, access and distribution of products, as well as talking about and learning more about existing initiatives that are already working to improve access to menstrual products. And I'll tell you, these discussions have been fascinating, and I have learned so much about the current work already underway from grassroots organizations across the country. And it is just so impressive. These discussions have really helped to reinforce the importance of choice when it comes to products. Undoubtedly, menstruators ourselves, we know best about what types of products fits our needs, suits our lives. And as we design this Menstrual Equity Fund, we recognize that offering choice of product supports the dignity of the menstruator. Another recurring priority through these discussions was that became apparent was the importance of education and awareness, both of which are required to reduce the stigma around menstruation, promote access to products, and advance menstrual equity. So it's not enough to simply provide products. We also need to ensure that menstruators know what product options are available and how to use them. There are many communities where menstruation is not openly discussed. Menstruators and non-menstruators alike can also benefit from understanding basic menstrual cycle information and reproductive anatomy. This in and of itself would go a long way towards destigmatizing and demystifying periods. And there was also consensus that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to address this issue. Canada's geographical and cultural diversity means that supply and distribution needs will vary from community to community. And I believe that flexibility will be crucial in the design of this national pilot project. Our government's actions, I think, complement the work that I know is also happening at the provincial level. British Columbia, we know, of course, was the first the first province to provide free menstrual products in schools. Since then, Prince Edward Island, we've heard tonight a bit about Ontario and Manitoba, have also begun initiatives to provide free products in schools. Also, more and more sectors are heeding the call and making a measurable difference. There's a growing list of individuals and organizations engaged in menstrual equity advocacy. To name a few, Monthly Dignity, a not-for-profit organization in Montreal that's been distributing menstrual supplies to those in need. Free Periods Canada, grassroots organization in Vancouver, engages in national advocacy to support education, research, collaboration, and support menstrual equity. And Period Promise, just to name a few. Period Promise, United Way initiative in British Columbia that collects and distributes menstrual supplies, in addition to community mobilization and advocacy at both the local and the national levels. So I think all Canadians can be proud that we are making progress and finally saying enough with outdated taboos around menstruation. We are certainly making it clear there's no tolerance for discrimination on this issue by improving access to menstrual products for women, girls, transsexual, and non-binary people, and ensuring their dignity and equality. There's no question, of course, as you all know, there's still a lot more work to do to eliminate menstrual inequity, and it will take all of us collectively to get that job done. But I believe, backed by committed Canadians, like all of us here tonight, and I know many, many others, that I'm confident with our combined energy, our skills, our passion, our expertise, that we will continue to make progress. And I'm proud, as the Parliamentary Secretary for Women, Gender Equality and Youth, to be able to play a small part in this vital progress. And I very much look forward to working with all of you as we continue to move ahead to better days for menstruating people all across this country. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Parliamentary Secretary Jenna. It has been so great to hear from you at the government level, as well as Marit Stiles for the provincial government. And we know that a municipal election is also coming up in Ontario, where hopefully we can advocate for change at the municipal level. Do you have any advice for the people who are attending right now as to how they can affect change or influence policies with regards to menstrual equity?
Great question, and interesting. Prior to being a member of Parliament, I was a city councillor. And a very short story for you. I first became engaged on this issue 4 years ago. And I became engaged because 2 young ladies in my community came to see me. And they said they had started this initiative in their school. They were doing a drive, a product drive, and collecting products for a local women's shelter. And they really wanted to push for more. So I worked with these young ladies, and we actually put a motion forward at City Council. It took time, it took a lot of iterations and patience, but we got a pilot project started here in Ottawa. And honestly, it was because these 2 young ladies came, and they came with such passion and knowledge and determination to affect change. And so I tell you that story in that, you know, for those of you who aspire to move the dial, you know, I encourage you to speak to your local elected representatives. To the point made, there is a municipal election here in Ontario coming up in October. Reach out to the candidates, align yourselves with those who share your values, and who are willing to take a stand when it comes to eliminating period poverty. I think those conversations are very impactful, as I've demonstrated. You know, I think there's a lot to be said about making your voice heard and engaging with your elected officials.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that story as well. I think that gives us a lot more courage to try to talk to elected officials, because whenever I see anything that says call your local elected official, I first have hesitation. So it's really nice to hear that it does make a difference.
It absolutely does, and you should never hesitate to reach out to your elected official. They're here to work on your behalf.
Thank you so much. And with that, hopefully all of you have heard now from the policy and politics aspect of where we are with menstrual equity here in Canada. And next event, we'll be talking more about student perspectives. So hopefully you will all be able to attend. Make sure to put that into your calendar or just register for it from now and put that into your calendar as well. Thank you all so much, all the panelists who came today and shared their expertise and their knowledge. And we've heard of so many different organizations that are working towards changing the flow, which is the name of one of the organizations, but we have so many, the Red Dot Project, Days for Girls. So hopefully you can find one that aligns with you and make a change. Thank you all.
Hi, my name is Zeba and I'm from Free Periods Canada. I'm inviting you to join our platform Charms, which connects people that are interested in learning more about menstrual health. Here you will find networking and volunteer opportunities. You can filter by location, expertise, and find people to collaborate with. You can also find grant and funding opportunities. Join our growing network to make period care more accessible.
Hi, Tina. Did you have a question?
Oh, mostly I was just like listening to it and I was trying to like access the Q&A, but it doesn't seem to work, the link. So yeah.
Okay, Kevin, I think just posted another link in the chat. If you're able to give that a shot for us, that would be great.
Okay, that's amazing. And I also wanted to give the feedback that that was a great presentation.
Thank you so much. That's so lovely.
We are doing some advocacy work out here in Saskatchewan, so it was really great to hear from Marit Stiles on that. So, yep, we are doing a lot of advocacy work out here in Saskatchewan. Got some meetings lined up. Hopefully we'll have good news.
Amazing. Thank you for that, and thank you for attending. And you can feel free to always get in touch with us and let us know how that's going.
Okay, that's awesome. Anyways, so I guess the event is over now. I was listening to it, so I wasn't actually watching the slides. I was just more listening to it while I was getting my dinner ready. But I will tune in next time.
Sounds great. Take care.
Have a good day.
Bye.
How do I leave? There we go.